Esto es Warp Talks, el podcast de Warp, en el que creamos un espacio de diálogo vivo con los nombres que marcan el ritmo en las diferentes industrias creativas alrededor del mundo.
Hey.
Hi, Jamie. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you very, very nicely. Yeah.
Okay. I'm doing good. You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm fine here with my cat. I'm going to present her to you.
Oh, yeah. Hey, buddy. How you doing? What's their name?
Chimuela. It's like
Chimuela?
But on Español. Yeah, Chimuela.
Oh, Chimuela, that's a good name.
Yes, she did. In fact, like one day she was like rubbing me with her nails and her teeth, and one of these, I don't know how to say it in English, funk fell off.
Yeah.
So that's why she's Chimuela.
That's really great. Thanks.
Well, it's very nice to talk to you, Jamie.
Yeah, you too.
Well, it is dense. It is kind of scary. I kind of like it.
Thanks for picking it up.
Well, I have been reading a lot of people's opinions about this new record about Ignore Grief, and a lot of them say that it is one of your most intense albums, and that it is also like kind of scary. I want to know, like, what do you think about this reception of being like music that has like so deep emotional impact that even people say that they are terrified of it?
I mean, I feel a couple ways about it. On one hand, I feel grateful that people listen to it at all. So, I mean, if somebody took the time to listen to it in the first place, I'm just thankful for it. And then once we're done with it, it's really not any of our business what people's reactions to it are. I mean, we made it, we put everything we could into it at the time, and then it's out in the world, and it's not for us anymore. It's for whoever, again, might take the time to listen to it. So, we very much want people to have their own reaction to anything we might work on. We may feel differently about it personally, but it's totally fine with us if somebody feels, or has a totally different interpretation, or feels totally different about it. We're not trying to like put forth a message and hope that this very specific message is ingested exactly the way that that we see it, or we're not trying to, push our own agenda onto anybody else. It's very much for somebody else to listen to and to experience in whatever way it's going to be, individual or truthful for them.
A couple of years ago, we were talking about Girl with Basket of Fruit, and you told me that one of the main reasons why you thought you were making music is like having this desire, this hope that anyone can understand the music and the message as it is for you. Do you think that's still the case?
Oh, did I maybe ask that again? I didn't quite understand the question. Sorry. I mean, you said it perfectly, but I think I didn't quite understand it.
Yeah, well, I was like asking you that a couple of years ago, you told me that you were making music in the hope that anyone can understand your message and your feelings as they are.
That I want them to understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you think that's still the case?
I think if I said that I don't know. I don't remember ever having felt that way. I think I've always wanted people to feel their own way about it. Like, it's not important to me at all that they feel the same way that I feel about it. Maybe I was in a weird mood or something, but I don't know that I normally ever feel that way. Like my own feelings about anything we're working on are for me to have, and it's not for me to impose them on somebody else.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it's like art is its own thing, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's if I look at a painting, then I'm looking at it to get something out of it. And if Mark Rothko had some other feelings about it, I don't really feel like having Mark Rothko impose his feelings about my experience.
Yeah, I understand.
And I don't want to do that on somebody else. Not to compare Xiu XIu to Mark Rothko, but you know what I mean.
But I think it has like something to be, well, the comparison for me is not like extremely abnormal, because, well, I was thinking, like, revisiting your albums a few days ago, that Xiu XIu have like, it's very structural pop records, right? And what made, I think, Xiu XIu special was their ability to change, to play with structure and to construct new things upon the main characteristics of pop music, right? Introducing experimental elements into it. But now we are having like albums like Girl with a Basket of Fruit and Ignore Grief, and they seem much more abstract and much more structureless in a way, like Rothko, I will say.
We're still, when the band started, and probably for the first 10 years of the band, we were and maybe even longer, we were certainly interested in pop music and top 40, and found them inspirational and listened to them, casually as fans. In the last several years, where we're still very interested in songs and sort of traditional song structures, I don't know, we're just not really interested in pop music anymore. You may have already heard me say this, so sorry if I'm repeating myself. We do listen to and really appreciate and still work with really traditional song structure, like verse, chorus, bridge type of structure, but I think not so much in a pop framework or within a pop mindset or pop as an influence necessarily.
Sure.
I don't think that pop music is bad or worthless or a pointless pursuit, but just for us as individuals, it's not where we are right now. But we're working on a new record right now that I wouldn't say it's a pop record, but it certainly has like songs, normal types of songs on it. So it's not completely erased from our pursuit, but catching them or being influenced by the very big word of what pop is seems a little far away from us right now. As noted, Girl with a Basket of Fruit and Ignore Grief have nothing to do with pop music in any way or those types of structures at all.
No, you're just like valuing other things right now, right?
Yeah, I think following is exactly the right way to put it. We're just trying to listen to where the goddess of music is pointing us and pay attention to what she has to say, rather than trying to force an expectation.
Yeah, I understand. It seems to me now that Xiu XIu music is like flowing more on impulse than on a conscious structure kind of way, and that the intellectual work in your new albums is just putting on the production side of things and layering the composition. I want to know if that's true, if you feel that this music is like has been more easy to compose and more, how do you say, like fluxus in a way, that just come and you wrote and recorded.
For me, this type of unstructured music, I think, is almost more difficult to put together.
Uh-huh.
With a like a song structure, you kind of know where it needs to go. As you're making it, like how long a verse sort of feels like, and so long a chorus feels like, and where it makes sense to put a bridge in something. So, you have a chart essentially, but if you're working on something that's less structured, having it still, put across some kind of emotion, but, without that chart necessarily, without being able to follow that chart necessarily, it's actually a lot harder, for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly for me not easier.
Okay, it's a challenge.
Music generally is difficult. Music is one of the most complicated aesthetic puzzles in human existence. So it's inherently difficult and inherently challenging. But not having not having some sort of historical or codified structure before you work on something certainly increases the challenge.
It's interesting that you were saying to me that music is like a puzzle, because I have always had like this feeling, also working on music myself, that it works like a Lego house in a way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Do you feel the same also?
That seems about right. Yeah.
Well, talking more about this new album, well, I've read the lyrics, and it's interesting to me to think about this. Like, well, I feel like they are all about, well, you're describing like a person that comes and that it never goes away and you don't want to look at him, and that you feel like close, like in a closed space. And well, I have like this feeling that the record is obviously not about a person, but about maybe a feeling, a depressive state. I want to know, like, if you think that this album come from maybe a chapter of depression or something like that.
Half of it is about 5 very specific people that are all connected to the band. And all of whom are conducting themselves, or some of whom are conducting themselves in incredibly negative and destructive ways, and some of whom are living under the most horrible conceivable circumstances that a person could go through. One of them is about someone who was murdered. But then the other half is in almost like a response to that pressure. It's still, they're all imaginary stories about tragedy, and the other 5 are real stories about tragedy. And we were having such a difficult time dealing emotionally with all of the things that were happening to people that we know. It just around the time that we were making the record, that sort of an experiment in coping was to write 5 songs that were about imaginary tragedy. So still sort of living and being within that mindset and still trying to face it, but needing to put it somewhere else, needing to put it into some sort of imaginary landscape, at the same time that we were dealing with the actual real instances. It wasn't like a depressive state. I mean, a depressive state just had personally dealing with depression. I know a lot of times I'll be in a depressive state. Everything in my life is fine. It's just a negative biochemical reaction. This record was much more about dealing with actual sadness, constructed and factual sadness, rather than necessarily a depressive state.
Yeah. One time you say that Xiu XIu was about dancing sadness with music, right? Or something like that. This is still the case, because you are like letting all these feelings out, and all these people like in a way, and creating something with it to make you feel better in a way.
It's not so much about making us feel better, because it's not like the bad feelings go away after we work on the music. Mm-hmm. It's more just about, and I've said this a lot, but it's held true for the life of the band. It's more about being able to put those negative feelings in another context, so they don't become, it doesn't become self-destructive. Like, I have a lot of mental health issues. I'm basically fucking nuts. And like, music gives me a way to deal with intense and long-lasting negative emotions, without necessarily turning that stuff onto myself. It's more of a way to organize emotions than necessarily erase them.
Yeah, I think that music could be like a very useful tool to do that, because it's not only a narrative art where you can like see your problems from other eyes perspective, but it is also very physical, so you are also like
exactly
the energy.
Yeah That's the exact right word to use to describe it.
Okay. Well, I know that you called the band Xiu XIu because of the movie. We have never talked about this. I have never seen the movie, but I need to. Well, and you have said in the past that you choose that movie because it is the saddest movie of all, right? And that you want to make
it wasn't so much as the saddest movie of all, but at the time, the person that I started Xiu XIu with, Corey McCulloch,
sure.
We both we didn't see it together, but we saw it around the same time, and essentially it's about a young woman during the Cultural Revolution in China, which obviously has nothing to do with us. We're both white middle class people from America. Yeah. But she in the movie is trying to improve her life, and everything she tries to do to make her life better makes it worse and worse and worse and worse. And I won't tell you the end, but it's not a happy ending. And Corey and I were both in a very low point in our lives when we saw it, and found that similarly to the character Xiu XIu, every time we tried to do something to make our lives better, it just made it worse. So we both related to her through her circumstance pretty directly. I haven't seen it since I saw it around the time it came out, but Drew Daniels from the band Matmos recently saw it and told me that it holds up and it's very good. I've been afraid to see it again in case I hated it. Like basically my entire adult life is built around this sort of constructed myth about what this movie is, and if I hated it, I want to ruin it. So anyway, but Drew Daniels, smart guy, knows about art, says it's still good. So maybe you should see it.
Well, from what you now feel about that movie, do you think that it still have like a relationship to this era of Xiu XIu, of the band?
I mean, my personal life is a trillion times better now than it was when the band started, thankfully. I mean, the world is fucked, and I still deal with a lot of internal mental health problems, but the specific circumstances of my life, very, very, very thankfully, do not relate to my life when the band started or to the character Xiu XIu's. I don't think I'd still be alive if it was still like that 20 years later.
That's great. Well, I want to talk a little bit. The last time we talked about Girl with Basket of Fruit, well, you say that it was like a very complicated record to make, and that was like a little bit draining, emotional draining. And to me, this new album, after all, no, that was like much more skeletal and friendly in a way. It seems to me like it's like back to making that kind of experience. I want to know if it was as difficult this time.
It was difficult, but in a different way. We learned a lot of production lessons from Girl with Basket of Fruit, just about how to deal with more abstract music. I mean, we on each record, though, maybe be one or two sort of abstract songs, but Girl with Basket of Fruit was the first one where the majority of the record was like that. I mean, there's one normal song on it, but there's no quote unquote normal songs on Ignore Grief at all. It was, I mean, also we dealt with a lot of different players on Girl with Basket of Fruit, and in Ignore Grief there was a lot fewer, so it wasn't as much to deal with from a technical standpoint, as far as constructing it. I don't know. I mean, Girl with Basket of Fruit largely, not entirely. I mean, some of it has to do with, some of it is has some historical references, but a lot of it is about demonic possession and sort of obsessive, like theoretical states. So it was technically difficult to put together, but and that part of it was emotionally draining. But as far as the subject matter was much more intellectual, not entirely, but largely much more intellectually based, except for a couple of songs. But the subject matter on Ignore Grief was much more emotionally draining because a lot of it was based in real life. if the production was not technically quite as difficult.
How are you dealing now with those stories on Ignore Grief? Do you think they are better now?
I mean, some of the things, some of the people's circumstances have changed since it has come out for the better, and some for the worse. I mean, this is a very cliche thing to say, but I mean, such is life, you know. I mean, sometimes things are great and sometimes they're totally horrible. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's not a lot else to do other than, I mean, you can choose to end it all or choose to keep going. And, you know, we, as a band, are choosing to keep going.
Yeah, well, I have always been like very surprised about you and your work because you seem to never stop, right? I remember like a couple of years ago that you produced this album of Saron Van Etten and you launched your solo album debut. I don't remember the name, sorry. Smoking, I don't know. You did a lot of music that year, and you like have like we were very worried about like the communicate that you launched in 2019 or 20, a little bit before the pandemic started.
Oh yeah. I had a
the
hiatus. Yeah.
I thought you were like having like a big rest because of that, but it just was like, I don't know, like 4 months and you have like a new album.
Well, you know, I mean, what else, you know, after you lose your mind, what else is there to do but work on a record?
Yeah, I was expecting like 2 years no Xiu XIu or something like that. It was like 4 months and new record of Xiu XIu launches. Yeah, that was pretty radical. And well, for me it is like amazing that you can do all these things like all the time and without rest. And I don't know, you have like a great set of records. 10 of them for me, like minimum 5 of them. And
wow, that's really nice of you to say. Thank you.
Oh no, don't worry. I want to know like how do you deal with this? It is like do you think that you are the kind of artist that when you are not making something you don't feel like good, or how do you say, or in peace?
I mean, it's a few things. I mean, on one hand, I genuinely love making records. It is my favorite thing in the entire world to do. Mm-hmm. And you know, the upside of loving to make records is, you know, you tend to make a lot of records, or downside, you know, if they turn out bad. And you know, and then the other thing is pretty similar to what you said. Like if I don't work on something for a long time, I don't feel right. Mm-hmm. I think it's just the way God made me for whatever reason. I mean, even before I had the opportunity to make records, I was always either trying to make records or working on some project or other since I was a kid. I think part of it is, you know, my dad was a really hardcore workaholic. So I think just, you know, it's just, and, you know, I grew up in a Protestant household, and in a Protestant household, basically like work is life, work is, you know, your self-worth. It's like work is existence essentially. So it's just part of how I was brought up. And then also, you know, like, I mean, getting to make records is a very rarefied experience. And, you know, they could end at any second. So I have this feeling like even though we've been making records for 20 years, I feel like we better keep making records because tomorrow we might not be able to make records. We better hurry up and do it today.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I was like also thinking about asking about your family because, well, until recently I knew that your father is like a big jazz guitarist and your uncle is like a very prolific producer, right?
Close. My dad was in some bands and was a session guitar player, but he didn't play jazz so much. He played like folk and rock music. But he did produce a couple of really excellent jazz musicians. And my uncle was a singer and a songwriter, and he wrote some really pretty big songs. They were both very, very, very talented and both very, very successful.
I want to know what influence musically does growing up with them have on you. Do you think that was an influence to you becoming interested in music?
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, there's kind of like no nice way to say it. Both of my uncle and my father grew up in extraordinarily abusive households. Their father was a fucking monster. So they had both had a lot of psychological and emotional problems. They weren't the easiest people to be around. For most of my life, my dad was pretty checked out. I mean, he wasn't trying to be mean, but he just was a complete disaster area mentally and emotionally, and he was just trying to get through the day. So I didn't really see, I mean, my parents were together when I was growing up. I didn't really see him all that much. But I mean, I knew he was a musician, and there were some instruments around the house, and I kind of had a conception of what music was. And I didn't really see my uncle that much growing up. I knew who he was, but I would only see him a little bit every couple of years. But the concept of that you could be a musician, that it was a realistic pursuit, was I had a model for that in both of them. And when I got to be older and more serious about music, my dad went through a couple of years where he was very, very stable and doing really well. And he made an attempt to kind of make up for having been gone a lot when I was younger, and really help me, just kind of before Xiu XIu started, but with some other bands I was in before that, really, tried to help me understand the basics of recording. And he talked to me about, reasons to play and sort of philosophies of music and things like that were incredibly formative for me. I wish, there's a lot of times now, he's been dead for a long time, as is my uncle, and I wish now, that I'm fully an adult, that he was around. There's a lot I'd like to be able to talk to him about. But I feel very grateful that he took the time when he was kind of more settled to help me get going.
From what I understand of your essay of the Huffington Post, your dad was a part of your band Indestructible Beat of Palo Alto, right?
Oh yeah. We played together that was the first band that I sang in, and that was kind of the time when he was trying to help me get going. And yeah, he played in that band for a couple of years. It was great to play with him.
Oh yeah, it seems like interesting, right? To have like a band with your dad.
It was funny, I mean, he was still relatively young. I mean, he was probably like how old I am now when he played in that band with me. So, I mean, I wouldn't feel crazy, playing with some like 20-year-olds now or something. So he probably felt okay about it. And there was a pretty wide age range in the band, so there was like 7 or 8 people in that band or something.
Oh yeah.
But it was cool. He was a very, very good musician, and I was not a very confident child, and I think he tried to let me know it was, it's kind of a thing that, you hope your parents would do, tell you, you can do it, He did a lot of that when we were first starting.
I suppose he also started to feel more close to you, seeing that you have like the same interests, right?
Yeah. I think, when I was very, very young and would fuck around and playing with music. I mean, I'm not a great technical player now.
You are, yeah. Well, guitarist you are, yeah.
That's nice of you to say. I'm not as good as I would like to be, but when I was very young, like I had no aptitude for it at all. And my dad played with like the best musicians that there ever were. So I mean, he could tell the difference between what really good playing was, and he was just like, okay, my kid is trying to play, but he kind of sucks, I mean, I think I got okay just because I didn't give up, but I didn't have any like natural aptitude for it or anything like that. So it was, I think if I was a kid, if I was very good, I'm sure he would have played with me more. But I think you're right. Probably as I got older and he could tell that I wasn't going to give up, even though I wasn't necessarily very good, probably he could tell that, that drive was there and wanted to encourage that.
If it was not your father and your uncle influence, what makes you start to be interested in writing songs?
I mean, I think just what it is for most kids. I just, mean, listening to records and just being, who can say why you're moved by anything? But, from the time I was really young, I was moved by music and wanted to become more involved in it.
Mm-hmm. I thought you were froze. I want to know, like, which was the first record that you remember have like a big influence on you or a big impact?
It was kind of at sort of two different phases. When I was 8 years old, I had a foster sister, and I mean, it's total cliche, but she gave me, the Beatles, Abbey Road, and it was like, of course, just fucking Beatles. But I would come home from school and I would listen to it every day. And then when I was in, I was in junior high. It's probably like 5 or 6 years later, I bought the first record I ever bought with my own money was Purple Rain by Prince. And that just sort of, that kind of blew my brains apart. And I mean, that's a very diverse and incredibly deep record. And, it got me into, funk and new wave and, into experimental music and synthesizers and things like that.
Talking about new wave, I believe that you have like a new band member. I don't know if it's official or not, but
it's official. Yeah,
official. Okay. Well, he was part of Devo and the Sparks, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was also part of this band that you be friends with in your childhood, Live Nudes Physics, or he was.
Live Nudes Psychics. Yeah, it's a really terrible band name, but it was a good band. There were great players in that band. Yeah, I was a teenager and they were all they were all adults. I don't really totally understand how I ended up in a band with them, but so David Kendrick was in that band. Paul Rossler, who was in the Screamers, was in that band. Josie Cotton, who had a couple top 10 new wave hits, she was in that band. And Geza X, who was the Germs producer and Dead Kennedys producer and had his own band, the Mommy Men, he was in that band. And is astonishingly great guitar player named Kenny Lyon. So as a very, very young person, I got a chance to play with some true badasses.
Well, how it feels to have like David join the band, seeing that you have been knowing him since that age.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I knew him when I was a kid, and then I didn't see him for more than 20 years.
Oh, really?
God, longer than that. And then I ran into him at some art thing in Los Angeles, and he was always really sweet to me in that band, and I always really liked him. And then we became friends again, and just hung out socially. And then he said, if you ever want me to play on anything, and I was like, oh, of course I'd love you to play on anything. And he played on our previous record, Oh No. He played on a couple songs on that, and then he did a lot of work on Ignore Grief, and just joined the band formally, and it's going to be touring with it.
From what I have read, you co-produced the album with him, right?
He wrote a lot of the lyrics, but Angela produced the record. Angela saw from him. Yeah.
Angela produced the record. Yeah, I have like mixed schedules here. I thought it was the contrary. What makes you invite him to join the band now?
Well, a lot of things. I mean, he's a fucking great drummer. I mean, why would you not invite a great drummer to play with you? It's exciting to me he's an excellent lyricist, but we write about very different things and in very different ways. And it's exciting to me to open that part up to somebody. It's anybody who was in the band ever could write lyrics if they wanted to, but nobody really did. So it's exciting to, it's like having another tool, or another pursuit. I mean, it opens up the possibilities of what the band can be. And also, I mean, he's just a fantastic guy. We get along, we hung out and didn't play together for like 2 years before we started playing again, like after we reconnected, and we're just like friends. He's been touring almost longer than I've been alive. So, I mean, he knows how to deal with, a lot of people can't deal with being on tour. They go crazy or they become assholes. but he has the experience to keep it very, very steady. So practically, socially, and musically, he's been wonderful. Angela feels the same way.
Oh, that's great. I have been making interviews also. Well, people have been interviewing me because I launched an EP a little while ago.
Cool. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. In fact, you were like a big influence because I took your Atlas Obscura course and I used
Oh, did you really? Oh, oh, thanks.
And well, I have like this feeling that, well, I thought I have like on subconscious level that, well, making music is not like something that you made individually, right? It's like a collective stuff. When you have like an idea and you give that idea to someone and that someone puts something new in there, it's like, I have like this feeling that it's like Remy from Ratatouille, like combining the cheese and the strawberry and creating something new. It's like it transforms what you thought was going to make your song, right? Or your
It's like one of the most exciting parts of music is having somebody there who who you trust enough to take it off and do it and in a direction that you never would think of, but that new direction will be exciting.
Xiu XIu has had like a lot of band members over the years, and there has been like a lot of very talented contributors to the project. I want to know, like, do you think that maybe also some particular things of the change of the sound or the speech of the band has been like has changed because of the band members that have come and go?
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point of playing with other people, is to have there be different hearts contributing to what you're trying to do. I'm curious as to what the band would be like if the same people who started the band were in it the whole time. But I mean, sometimes it's been an incredible hassle dealing with lineup changes. But by and large, it's been exciting. I mean, in some way there have been a lot of lineup changes, and in some ways it's been fairly steady. I mean, Angela's been in the band for 12 years at this point, and I mean, we work a lot with the same people. I mean, we worked with Greg Saunier since the beginning. We worked with Chess Smith almost for years and years. And with a lot of the same engineers. So there's like a core group of people who have been there for a long time, but there have been a lot of other people who've joined for a short period of time or something like that. And then also we on almost every record we've had a lot of guests play on it. Just to have there be new sparks.
Yeah, I think that's like a very for rock music, I think it's pretty uncommon to have like big changes on your lineup every now and then. But I think for rap music or for pop, we have been seeing that the best albums come from people who have like 40 collaborators.
Yeah.
So I don't know why some musicians have like not the ability to open their creation.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, although it is sometimes great, it is an enormous pain in the ass. Also,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have that stability, and I mean, and if you get people who are amazing, then you want to keep working with them.
If don't, you don't. It's a pain.
Yeah, if you don't, I mean, a lot of bands only last for like 4 or 5 years for that reason. They run out of fuel or people stop getting along, and I mean, it could have been that way with Xiu XIu, but I just had other people join.
Yeah. It was a good decision, I think.
Thanks.
Like Nine Inch Nails or The Cure kind of thing. Yeah. One of the things that I love more about Xiu XIu and your discography in general is like some of the covers that you have made. I think they are like very specific ones that kind of develop their sound and their tone in a way in which you bring the message of the original song to new ideas. I have, and specifically, I think that Only Girl in the World, the Beyonce cover, and Under Pressure from David Bowie and Queen, you imprint to them in your interpretation of those songs, like the real anxious indusity and kind of toxic mannerisms that those songs have in their lyrics. I think that's like pretty brilliant, but I don't know if that's just something I come up with. If that's just my feeling. I want to know, like, what was your intention in doing these covers?
I like that interpretation a lot, and I know I said at the beginning of our talk that I really appreciate it when people have their own interpretations. And for Under Pressure, it was every time we've ever put a cover on a record, I mean, the point of it is that we're trying to say thank you to that song for having given something to us or having taught us something. They're always songs that we love. But for Only Girl in the World and for Under Pressure was for two very different reasons. For Under Pressure, Freddie Mercury and David Bowie are two of my favorite singers of all time, and I love that song as a rock song. I think it's one of the greatest rock songs ever written. So the motivation for doing it was, as I said before, just to say thank you to that song. I mean, that's what moved us about it, was just the song itself is so amazing. And I got to be acquaintances with Michael Gira, and I knew that David Bowie was one of his favorite singers, and Michael Gira is also one of my favorite singers. So almost is not a joke, but like, oh my God, okay, what if we did a cover with two of my favorite singers sung it originally, but I sing it with one of my favorite singers also. So anyway, and he very graciously agreed to do it, and I think did a remarkable job on it. For Only Girl in the World, at the time we were recording that, I was living in this very shitty small town in the South in the United States and really fucking hated it. The only kind of good thing about this town is there was a very small lesbian bar that was open just on Saturdays, I think, and they always had a good dance night, and I could walk there basically, so I could get really fucking drunk and walk home and not worry about it. So I would go there a whole lot. And then one night I went there and the dance floor was totally empty. There was a lot of people there, but nobody was dancing. And then the DJ put that song on, and then like all the really super intense Butch Dykes were on the dance floor, all dancing together to that song. And it was, the lyrics are, "You make me feel like I'm the only girl in the world." And it was all of the things, the shitty little town in the shitty part of the United States, and then this sort of rarefied, very small lesbian bar, and then all of, and like Butch Dykes are a very sort of, specific segment of the queer world with a very specific history, and then this pop song. It was essentially, I'm sure every Rihanna song is like 50 people write it, and it's a song by committee essentially. But that even though something that was somewhat sanitized was able to create a very real emotional movement for this marginalized group of people in a marginalized part of the United States, was very, very beautiful to me, and it made me hear that song in a totally different way. So it was as much about wanting to pay tribute to that moment and to what music can be generally, as much as it was to that song specifically.
That sounds very interesting, because it also sounds like a punk moment, right? Like it's like,
yeah, kind of
very contracultural. It's like the song that brings the people who are down the excitement to
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's a great story.
It was a magic moment.
Have you had like more of these moments? Can you remember some?
I mean, that's a nice part of music. I mean, I think more than other art forms, it makes those moments possible. I mean, when you're reading a book, it's a solitary thing, and it can be one of the most extraordinary experiences you have, but it doesn't put a group of people onto a dance floor or something like that, or if you're watching a movie, it's a much more singular experience. But and you said before too, I mean, it's a physical thing. Like reading a book and watching a movie are not physical experiences. They can be intellectual and emotional, but they're not physical. But music is intellectual, emotional, physical, and a social experience. So I mean, just by its design, it makes those types of moments much more possible.
That's interesting. I remember that on one of your essays on Huffington Post, that your father told you that the objective of making music is to, what was it? To connect people,
or to give.
Yeah, that's still the reason for you.
I mean, we try to have that be the reason. I mean, it's not always possible to have that be all the time, but it's our goal to have that be the point.
Yeah. What do you think you could give people when they listen to Ignore Grief?
I mean, it's not a specific thing. I mean, we try to make the best record we can when we're making it, and we try to be as honest with ourselves about what the record is and what our feelings are about it when we're making it. And then the hope is, because we have tried to put as much of ourselves into it in the most real way that we can, then somebody will get something from that. Yeah. And in the specific thing that somebody might get from that, as I said when we first started talking, isn't really up to us. It's up to them. But we hope that by trying to come at a record from as pure a place as we can, that it's more possible for somebody to get something from it.
Yeah.
But again, what that is isn't up to us, and we don't know. We clearly don't always succeed at that. But it's the energy behind our intent. I mean, our attempt.
There's a cultural movement. It started, as I know, in writing by David Foster Wallace, that is called metamodernism. Do you know something about that? Mm-hmm. It's people, where academics are like comparing this narrative exploration with music from like Sufjan Stevens, or films like from Wes Anderson, and that kind of artists that are like so sincere that it hurts, right? And that level of sincerity is also what provokes the humor in them. It's like, I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but it's like this movement that are like so against postmodernism and their idea of making something ironical just for the sake of being ironical, that you battle that with being completely sincere and completely naked. And I have always had like this feeling that Xiu XIu belongs to that movement in a way.
Not intentionally, because I was unaware of it, but but yeah, for sure. Actually, on the first, for us, irony has no place in music at all. For music that we're interested in, I don't think that it makes. I don't think it's an invalid pursuit, but for us, it's absolutely not where we're coming from. The first label that we were on, 5RC, which was a part of Kill Rockstar's Slim Moon, who put that label together, had kind of a manifesto for 5RC. I think, I can't remember very much about it at all. There was like a list of things 5RC is not, and a list of things that 5RC is. And on the not side, it said ironic.
Oh, really?
This was in like the early 2000s, and there was, especially on the west coast of the US, there was a lot of very ironic bands. Yeah, it was a big part of music. And although we didn't know this about 5RC when we were on that label, we felt very, very much at home, because we knew that was not something that made sense for us musically. It still doesn't. I don't think that's something that, I like to keep what Xiu XIu does as open as possible, but that's something that I think we could never let into the band.
Yeah, I think that irony, in a way, is like to put a wall. Some very fun and and enjoyable and interesting art can come out of that, but
to me, it prevents a real connection.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe preventing connection is the point of what you're trying to do, you know.
When you are ironical, it's like a protection wall, I think.
Yeah.
It's not as, I think it's much more brave to be completely sincere and to find comedy on your own grotesque.
Yeah, grotesque. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, you are going to launch your book. Finally, you took like 20 minutes.
Yeah. It took long enough.
It was difficult to finally let go of that writing.
Well, I didn't really work at it very hard, and I worked on it really hard for about a year, but then it took a couple years to get, to find a publisher, to find an editor, and for it to actually get put together. I think I finished writing it a couple of years ago. It wasn't as if I think I was writing it around the time we were working on Girl with Basket of Fruit. You told me about that when we talked around the Forget era. I think it had come up a little bit as an idea, but it wasn't anything I was formally doing, and but really knuckled down and did it around that time when we were working on that record. So yeah, it's been a while. I was editing it until like the day before it was going to be pressed, so it went through a lot of fine tuning, and I think that, I don't know, at one point it was completed, and then a bunch of stories were chopped out and other things were added. And
oh, really?
Anyway, it was a very long process. It's not that long a book. It didn't deserve that long a process.
I was thinking like stories come and go. It's like you have a lot of personal stories to put on this album, on this book, and it's all about like sexual experiences, right?
Yeah, more or less.
Well, I also read the essay that you have on the Huffington Post about being bisexual. It has been easier in these later years to be a bisexual man with all these movements of LGBT visibility.
Oh, yeah. There's still a long way to go, and obviously governments all over the world are still using queer people as a whipping post to distract people from actual issues. But it's better. At least in Western countries, it's been better. It's better now than it has ever been in history to be a queer person.
No, that's great. Yeah, it has been like some very crazy what's happening on Russia like these few months, right? Like everything seems to be about sexuality, and
it's insane. There's some in the United States. Just this week, some states are trying to make it be like to have drag shows be illegal, and like essentially to be illegal to be a trans person in public. They're entirely and totally against the law, but the way that U.S. politics works is the states can try and pull some bigoted horseshit, and then it takes years for the federal government to be able to legally do something about it. Certainly things are not as good as they could be, but they're certainly better than they were.
Well, you're going to publish your book that it's full of bisexual experiences, right? So it's.
Oh yeah, I only very, very rarely. I was really. I grew up in California, which is an incredibly liberal place, so sure. It was only very rarely that I ever dealt with any kind of discrimination at all. I was super fortunate and privileged in that way. Once in a while, but not much. It doesn't come up in the book at all. Nothing interesting happened. Just fucking people being idiots, but nothing worth telling a story about.
Oh, I was like bringing this issue because I have never have like this feeling that Xiu XIu is like a band who talks. Well, you have like songs about sex, but it's not like Xiu Xiu. I would not say that it's about an experience or an identity. It's like about the music, right? And about anything you want to write. But this book is completely about the experience and completely about the identity, the sexual identity.
It's about sexual identity in that it was written by somebody who has a sexual identity. I mean, it's a queer book because as the author, I'm queer. But it's not really about queer politics at all. I mean, it's about in like individual experiences which happen to be queer, which is, I think, more of what Xiu Xiu is about. I mean, I think Xiu Xiu is a queer band, but because two of the people in the band are queer, so, and it's about experiences. But I mean, I would even say that we're a political band, but I think, but it may, it's the cliche of, the personal is political, and that's why we're a political queer band, is because we're writing about personal things.
Sure.
And those happen to be what our personal lives are.
Well, you have been like a pretty political person. I remember the polemic with Thor Harris, right? About his tutorial of punching Nazis.
Oh, yeah.
That was great. Well, Jamie, I think I'm going to end this interview, but I have like some specific questions. I want to know, what would you recommend to someone who is dealing with depression?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, everybody's depression is their own personal hell. I mean, I can talk about stuff that I do, but I don't know if I would necessarily. I mean, these aren't like a universal cure. I mean, it's really hard to say. It's such a complicated pain in the ass. Try to get enough sleep. Don't drink too much. I find if I have a schedule, it really helps me a lot. Understand that depression is. If you have depression, it's just going to be an inevitable part of your life, and you're not doing anything wrong. I mean, for a long time, I felt guilty about it, and now I'm just like, oh, okay, here this comes again. What a fucking disruptive shit show I'm going to be for, however long this particular episode is going to last. Try to be nice to people around you, because being around depressed people sucks. So know that, when you're depressed, you're probably a drag to be around. So even though you feel awful, try to be nice to people. And, I mean, if you have it in you, creative pursuits can be extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah, sure. Can be.
I mean, even if you don't show it to somebody, if it's not a public thing, just trying to put that energy somewhere else.
I remember that. I don't know where I came with this, but you made like 200 drawings of ugly cats.
Oh yeah, I was really freaking out when that happened. I couldn't stop. I think I just did it for like 36 hours or something. It was a really weird mental state to be in. I think I was watching. I was doing these cat drawings, and then had the Lars von Trier movie Nymphomaniac. Do you know that movie?
Yeah, sure. Of Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, I think I just watched it like I think it says 2 episodes. Or it's like 4 hours long or something. I think I just watched it like over and over again. Watching these cat drawings. It was completely ridiculous.
What did you do to those drawings?
I gave them to an art gallery in Australia, the James Hawley Gallery, and in exchange, he sent me a bunch of music equipment.
Oh, that's great! Yeah,
it would turn out really great for me. He was a fantastic patron. He's a good guy, and James Hawley, in addition to being a great gallerist, is a really good singer too.
30 hours well spent drawing ugly cats. Yeah.
It ended up being worth it. A lot of music equipment that we still use all the time came from that exchange.
Oh, that's great. You are going to start the tour of this record. I'm sure
Yeah.
Like Mexico planning, right now.
We were going to play there, and the tour schedule is really tight. We do all of the US, and then we have like 5 days off, and then do a month in Europe. And we had a show booked between the US and Europe dates, but it would mean essentially like we would have no break at all between the two tours. There was just so I think we're trying to reschedule it for the fall. We love playing in Mexico, and we're disappointed we weren't able to make that show work out. But we're trying to reschedule for the fall.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great news. I would very love to see you here again.
We don't get to play there enough. It's been, I think 2017 was the last time. So it's been a while.
Yeah, I was there. It was a great concert. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
And well, I think that's going to be everything, Jamie.
Cool. Thanks, Oscar.
It
was very nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it was nice to talk to you. I want to send you my EP. Can I?
Oh yeah, I would love to hear it. Please do. Yeah, email it to me.
Okay, I'm going to email to you right now. And well, thank you very much for your time. Hope you have like a good night.
Yeah, I hope you have a great day. Thanks for your time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Suscríbete a nuestro podcast y escucha las entrevistas más relevantes de WARP en WARP Talks. WARP Talks. WARP Talks.